Welcome, America. I'm Mark Levin. This is Life, Liberty, and Levin. We have two great guests. John Solomon. Good to see you, sir.
Good with you, Mark.
Sara Carter. Good to see you.
So nice to see you, Mark.
Everyone knows who you are. You're ubiquitous, and there's a reason for that. You're the, I don't want to offend you, like the Woodward and Bernsteins of our time. Of course, Woodward and Bernstein aren't anymore. But you've dug into this story about Russia, about the Obama administration, about spying, about what I consider the greatest political scandal, if not in modern history, in all history. And I'm very much a historian. For 2 years, this collusion narrative, really 2.5 years, has been pushed. Pushed by the Hillary campaign, by the DNC, by their propagandists, by the surrogates, by the media. You're professional journalists. John Solomon, let me go to you first. How do you explain your doggedness? It's almost instinctive. You see this, you're a journalist, this is how you were trained, and you go after it. And yet the vast majority of others in your profession, they see it and they divert. How do you explain that?
You know, I think there's a romanticism in the profession with Watergate. Everyone wants the next Watergate, and they're trying to aspire to it. I grew up in an era where you were told never to fall in love with your story, to always be dispassionate, and to just follow the facts wherever they lay. And when we started to follow the facts, they did not add up to the story that the mainstream media and the Obama administration was telling us. We were talking to the very intelligence people that were briefing Congress behind closed doors and telling them we don't have evidence of collusion. And then we see these members come out and say there's evidence of collusion. People like Adam Schiff and Mark Warner. And we just kept with it. We talked to people and we kept hearing it's not there. This is a faux scandal. It's a dirty political trick. Stick to the facts and you'll get the truth. And that's what we did. We just stuck to the facts. We didn't become passionate. We just followed the facts where they went.
But why are there so few journalists who follow the facts where they go?
I don't know, and I don't understand it. I don't know what their personal decisions are. I know my own. I know that when I started as a journalist many decades ago, a couple of decades ago or more, the first thing I was taught is you are a voice for the voiceless. Your objectivity is everything, as much as you can be objective in a story, because we all have our own personal feelings when we enter it. We try to put those aside, be dispassionate, as John said. But we're really there to tell the story. It's not our story. And we rely on multiple sources, regardless of who that source is. Whether that source is John Brennan or James Clapper, and we put a lot of emphasis in senior officials. I was told, don't put emphasis in senior officials. Find three, I mean, even John and I discussed this. We would cover stories all the time when we started at the Washington Times. Didn't matter if it was
president. We worked together at the Washington Times.
Yeah, we did. We did. That's where we met. I came from California. I heard John Solomon was going to be coming from the Post to go to the Washington Times, and I was very excited. He came on board. And John sent me, I was at the foreign desk, and John sent me on my merry way to Afghanistan and said, bring us back some stories.
And that you did.
And that I did. And I spent time on the ground with soldiers, with U.S. soldiers.
You've both been journalists for some time now. You heard what Koppel had to say. He's very concerned about what's happening to major media outlets here.
So am I.
You're concerned too.
Yeah.
What do? You just keep soldiering on, show people what a real journalist is, show people how to do news? Or is there a need for something more, something bigger, do you think?
That's a great question. You know, I think the industry has to have a moment of introspection after what's happened here, and not some faux introspection where we beat our chest for a couple of days and move on. I think we have to look at how do we practice journalism in the 21st century, where we have Twitter and Facebook and all these outlets to say things. I think one of the great signs that I saw coming of an industry that was straying so far from neutrality was when Twitter started, and you would see these reporters make these extraordinary expressions of opinion. I would have been fired at the Associated Press if I ever said any of those things 20 years ago, and it just opened up a bottle of champagne, a cork popped out, and all of a sudden journalists felt they could just say whatever they wanted. And I learned when I came in, no one cared about my opinion. They want to hear about the facts you have in your notebook. I think we strayed so far from that. We've got to go back and look, how did that happen? And how do we try to resolve what we've done to the industry? We've lost a lot of our credibility.
Well, and the public is very well aware of that. I mean, we see that in how the public views journalism now as, I mean, there's no trust. There's a lack of trust. One of the things that I thought of and I wanted to say, I remember, you know, every great editor has always told me this. You don't write a story from behind a desk. You go there, you interview the people, you look at them in the face, you ask for documents, you find what their motive is. Do they have a motive for telling you this? What is that motive? Sometimes the motive may be selfish. It may still be the truth, but we need to know what the motive is. That's what we always did. I saw it changing. I saw it shifting. So many journalists in a lot of different newsrooms that I worked in would never leave their desk. They always wanted to have friends, especially in Washington, D.C. There was a big bubble here where people felt that, you know, it was better to be friends with the administration, especially under Obama, President Obama. People really wanted to be friends with the administration, go to their parties, go to their dinners. It became very difficult for them to tell the truth, to tell the stories, to hold these officials accountable. And I think that's what we've seen.
Is this how they missed the Trump election?
Yeah, clearly.
Sitting behind their desk?
Sitting behind their desk and tweeting instead of getting out and talking to real America. If people were out in Wisconsin, if they were out in Iowa, they would have seen this groundswell of a connection between real Americans and the president that we, sitting on the global elitist desks of these news organizations, completely missed. And I think that journalism, when I first took my job, my very first editor in Washington, Walter Mears, great famous journalist, said to me, what makes a great journalist? Their soul. And I said, what do you mean their soul? And he said, the sole of their shoes. If it's worn out, then you know they're doing their job. If they're clean and new, they're not out really reporting.
You both operate in an area of journalism where you deal with shady characters from time to time, or you deal in the shadows from time to time. Have you ever had any unusual experiences doing that?
Never any unusual experiences. I mean, people come with motives, and you have to deduct what those motives are, report them out, try to control that the motive doesn't sway the story. But, you know, many people have approached, most of the people that have approached me, and I'm sure with Sarah, have good intentions. They want to get a story out. They think.
Have you ever been approached in an unusual way?
Oh, I'll tell you a story about a mailbox, which occurred at my home. It's seminal to the Russia story. Sarah and I had just begun working on what we called the NSA abuse stories where we were working. And unmasking it. We had just gone on television on Sean Hannity's show that night. We talked about this sudden rise in unmaskings. And I drove home, I got to my mailbox, pulled in my car, there was a blue sedan sitting outside the mailbox, and there were two gentlemen, clearly intelligence officers, somewhere from the government. They never identified their names. And they stepped out and they said, are you Mr. Solomon? I said, yes. They said, we just saw you on Sean Hannity's show. We wanted to talk to you for a second. We can't tell you much because most of what we know is classified, but we will tell you this. If you keep digging, you will find out that the United States intelligence community was used for a political opposition research project, and we are deeply concerned. And I said, well, why are you concerned? We need these tools, things like FISA and the NSA, to capture bad guys. And if we misuse it for political dirty tricks, we won't have those tools when the next terrorist attack or the next spy shows up in town. We need you to go find out what happened. And that's all they told me. It was about 11:30 by the time we finished the conversation. I ran in, I wrote this long email of everything I could remember. I sent it to Sarah. Hits the box about 2 o'clock in the morning. She's still up. She responds right back. But that's how we got started into really understanding this was much bigger than just an unmasking scandal.
It was huge.
How long ago was this?
Oh, was that 2017?
March of 2017?
Yeah, March 2017, because we'd already been working on the stories.
Right.
I mean, we were getting tipped off. We saw what was happening to General Flynn, Lieutenant General Mike Flynn. I remember being approached by, let's say, federal law enforcement officers who had told me, you really need to dig into what's happened to Lieutenant General Flynn. Apparently, there's a lot been going on inside the FBI. Look at Andrew McCabe. Focus on some of these characters. It was the same thing that happened to John. I started focusing in and just really taking a step back, saying what's going on here. And the more we started to investigate, little by little, we started peeling back what we call the onion, right? The layers of the onion. It really felt like that. So then I think, it can't get much worse than this. It can't get much worse than this.
Was General Flynn set up?
I absolutely believe that General Flynn was a target from the very beginning.
Because the Obama generals didn't like him. The
That's
Obama
absolutely
intelligence, is that
true.
correct?
Yeah.
Their intelligence.
Absolutely.
And if you keep in mind, if you look back at that time, he was talking about a massive reorganization of the intelligence community.
That's right.
There are a lot of powerful constituencies in the intelligence community that like the status quo, and he was talking about reorganizing that, and I think he had a target on his back, and the opportunity struck. And to answer the question of whether he was set up, all you have to do is take James Comey's own comments at that seminar in New York. We tricked him into being interviewed before he could get lawyers. What a statement to be made by the man.
Him.
Yeah. To be made by the man who oversaw our FBI.
Not only that, but to oversaw the FBI, but a man who spent, a lieutenant general, who spent 33 years of his life dedicated to this nation, his service overseas was exemplary. Without him, I have been told by assistant deputy directors of the Department of Defense and others, without him, he was like the third leg on getting Al-Qaeda, on targeting all the Al-Qaeda operatives in Iraq. Yeah. In Afghanistan, I talked to soldiers who said he would stand by us. He was always there for us. He was always defending us. And they just basically destroyed this man's life. They turned his life upside down, but I knew it. There was a purpose for that, Mark. There was a purpose because he had access to everything. This is a man that angered the CIA, that was head of the DIA. He had connections all over this town. He knew where the bodies were buried. He knew about Benghazi. He knew how all these operations, and President Obama and his team early on knew they had to get this guy out of the way, and they had to get him out of the way quick.
And they'd already tried to get him out of the way, and they failed, and he became a top advisor to the President of the United States. I hope he's at the top of the list for a pardon. That's just me. Ladies and gentlemen, don't forget, almost every weeknight you can watch Levin TV on blazetv.com/Mark, blazetv.com/Mark, or give us a call, 844-LEVIN-TV, 844-LEVIN-TV.